Hello from Tikvah. I'm Meir Soloveichik, and I'm delighted to welcome to my series of short conversations on what Jerusalem means to me, one of the most eloquent and courageous defenders of Israel in the United States Congress, Congressman Ritchie Torres. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Why don't we start with you just speaking a little bit about your experiences visiting Jerusalem and what impact that had on you?
So I come from humble origins in the Bronx, so I never had an opportunity to travel abroad until 2015 when I went to Israel, and my first stop was Jerusalem.
So that's your first time abroad ever was in Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fabulous.
It feels divinely inspired. So it's not only wonderful. One of the cradles of civilization, but it's one of the cradles of my own maturation. And I've gone to Israel and Jerusalem on 3 occasions, twice as a New York City council member under the Jewish Community Relations Council, and then once as a congressman under the American Israel Education Fund, AEIF, the educational arm of AIPAC. And, to experience Jerusalem is a transformative moment. It's a transformative experience to see Jews and Christians and Muslims worship together in Jerusalem. It's a wonderful tableau of religious pluralism. And, Israel is unique because it's both modern and ancient at the same time. Yeah. And when you're in Jerusalem, you have a sense of Israel as an ancient civilization reborn. Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing to experience. I was born as a...
Yeah, please, go ahead, please. Yeah.
No, I was born as a Catholic, so it was gratifying for me to go to the Church of Holy Sepulcher,
right?
Which is reportedly the site of the crucifixion and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and my understanding is that the tensions between and among the various sects of Christianity, those tensions are so strong that a third party, a Muslim third party, had to be put in charge of controlling access to the Church of Holy Sepulcher. Yeah. So I felt like it's ironic that access to the holiest site in Christianity is controlled by Muslims.
It's facilitated by someone from another faith. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But in a city governed by the Jewish state, and I feel like that is just a wonderful story about the interconnectedness of the Abrahamic traditions in Jerusalem.
The interconnectedness and the way, as you just said so eloquently, how Jerusalem is at the core of that connectedness. Now,
and Israel plays...
Yeah, please.
And Israel, I think, is performing a global public service. It's playing an indispensable role in the historic preservation of Jerusalem.
So say more on that. What do you mean by that? That's a very striking point. What is this public service that Israel is playing in Jerusalem?
We should ask, what would become of Jerusalem if it were not in the hands of Israel? I think Israel, can be uniquely trusted to safeguard a heritage, an Abrahamic heritage that has immense meaning to billions of people in the world. Israel's not only doing itself a service, it's doing much of humanity a service by preserving a heritage that means so much to so many people.
One of the phrases you used just now in your description of Jerusalem is something that strikes me whenever I'm there, which is, you said it's this, and correct me if I don't get it exactly right, it's a mix of ancient and modern. So for me, it's always when you walk out of the Jaffa Gate, right, into let's say the Mamila Mall, it's like you're traversing thousands of years and in several footsteps. And that's an experience that you can't really get anywhere else on earth. So that highlights something about Jerusalem specifically. And I'm wondering what you think we're supposed to make. And what that highlights is, of course, the mysterious eternity of Jerusalem and the mysterious continuity of the people connected to Jerusalem. So I'm wondering what you make of the fact that there's this one small city that continues to draw the focus and fascination of the world, both for good and for ill, and whether this is connected to the fact that there's one small people that is linked to Jerusalem and continues to draw the focus and fascination of the world. Again, both for good and for ill. What do you think about that mysterious both continuity and also fascination with Jerusalem?
Jerusalem is a miracle. Israel is the only ancient civilization that's going to be born. Jerusalem, which matters in Judaism and Christianity and Islam, is arguably the holiest place on earth, and the holiness is palpable to anyone who goes there, to anyone who goes to the Old City, who goes to the Western Wall. It's an overwhelming experience, especially the first time you go.
Yeah.
So I think it's rightly the object of fascination for people across the world.
Yeah.
And I commend Israel for preserving this heritage so that we can pass it down to the next generation.
That's wonderfully said. I actually had a piece in the Wall Street Journal last week where I mentioned, just to parallel exactly what you just said, was that I was I had taken the new high-speed train from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I don't know if you experienced the new train system when you were there, Congressman. But
I have not, but I'm sure it's better than the train system in New York City. So.
It is. As someone who rode the subway today to get to where I am right now as I'm speaking to you, and who rides there every day, it's a lot better, and it's absolutely incredible. But what's amazing about it is, just to build on your point, is that when I bought the ticket, this is what I wrote in the journal, and I looked at the ticket in Hebrew, I remembered that actually Theodor Herzl, when he first wrote The Jewish State, presenting his vision of a restored Jewish state, he described what it would be like, and the one thing he couldn't imagine is that Hebrew would be reborn. And the example he gives is, he says, are we going to get to a state where we're going to be able to buy a train ticket in Hebrew? Such a thing cannot be done. In other words, that was too miraculous for him to imagine. And yet, that's what you do now. And so it's even the prosaic in Jerusalem is miraculous. And I think that's sort of what you're highlighting.
It's miraculous and holy. The third time I went to Jerusalem, I learned something new. So I had taken for granted that the Old City was synonymous with biblical Jerusalem.
Right, which it isn't, right?
And I discovered that it's the city of David.
Yes.
And so I had an opportunity to tour the underground tunnels of the city of David.
So you went up on the pilgrimage road, in other words.
We did.
Yes.
And the tour guide actually rubbed charcoal on my hand, and the charcoal dates back to the burning of the Second Temple. So I jokingly say that I have like the holiest hands in Congress, because I had 2,000-year-old charcoal.
I love that. That's going in a sermon, Congressman, by the way. You've now done for me the greatest thing that one could ever do, which is give a rabbi something to say in a sermon. That's far more important than anything else you could do. And so now you're going to appear in my Rosh Hashanah sermon. So, because that's going in there. So I'm already.
Well, that was my true motive for this interview. So
yeah, exactly. As it should be. As it should be. That now I'm truly in your debt. And just to add a personal note, when we were in Israel for my daughter's bat mitzvah, we did many different things, and it was in the Old City. And then we went to the city of David. And then at the end, I asked them what was your favorite moment, and they mentioned precisely that, touching the ashes of the Old City, of the original Old City, of course, because it's, as you say, it's destruction and resurrection. It's the miracle right there, and so it was personal for them. So it was so beautiful for me to hear you mention that. Let's just talk a little bit about your own courageous defense of Israel and being a spokesman for Israel in Congress. Why do you think there has been such a turn against Israel and against an Israeli Jerusalem in certain segments of the political spectrum? And what's inspired your own defense of Israel in the face of it?
Well, there's been a concerted effort by a propaganda movement known as BDS to indoctrinate Americans, particularly millennials and Gen Z, with a hatred for Israel as a Jewish state. And the movement has become influential, particularly on American college campuses. And I have said repeatedly that I'm concerned that the hard left could become to the Democratic Party in American politics what Jeremy Corbyn became to the Labour Party in British politics.
Right.
So I see myself on a mission to resist what I call the Jeremy Corbynization of progressive politics. Because for me, BDS is an insidious form of anti-Semitism that has no place in American politics, in the mainstream of American politics. And history tells us that any society that embraces anti-Semitism, even in the insidious form of BDS, will ultimately rot from within.
Wow.
So I feel an obligation to save progressive politics from the extremes of BDS.
And you yourself, it's not just that you have spoken out in defense of others who are being targeted. I believe you yourself then have been the target of harassment because of your defense of Israel. Is that correct?
There's no subject in which I face more harassment than on the subject of Israel, which speaks to the intensity of anti-Semitic sentiment in American politics, and it percolates on social media.
So what would you tell someone who's about to visit Jerusalem for the first time, especially given the uniqueness of your experience? If you know of someone who's about to go, has never been, what would you say to him or to her about what they should have in mind in visiting Jerusalem?
Prepare yourself to be spiritually uplifted. There's a sense in which without history and philosophy, without ideas, we would all be doomed to lead short lives. And it's history that enables us to transcend the shortness of life, that enables us to connect to a time and place beyond our own. And when you go to Jerusalem, you are connecting yourself to thousands of years of human history. And that's a beautiful thing, and that's not something that should be taken for granted, that should be celebrated as a miracle. That is our history. Right? History is to society, to humanity, but memory is to an individual. And Jerusalem is a material manifestation of our history.
Well, that's perfectly said, Congressman. That may well go into my sermon as well. So on that note, I hope...
I'm going to start applying for copyright protection.
Listen, we'll see if I can work out a deal here where, we can give a percentage on behalf of for my sermons. But so on behalf of myself and my congregation, but mostly myself, I want to thank you for giving me so many inspiring things to say in the many days of sermons that are yet to come. And much more, even more profoundly, I just want to thank you for your own courage and your eloquence and for speaking up on behalf of the Jewish state and the Jewish people, and to wish you a blessed new year ahead.
Well, God bless you and your family.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you so much.